Today will be a rather quick episode discussing my own opinion on how much of a coward Troy Driver is. Usually, I try to aim to have some compassion for human life in general, but sometimes some people make it hard. Let's get
It's a
into it.
mystery still looming over the Hampton Roads community.
Prosecutors are disappointed with today's results.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then welcome. I'm Amanda. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a free way that you can really help me out. So as you could tell from the thumbnail and the intro, we will be discussing Troy Driver and the most recent update in the Naomi Irion case. It's a sad update really because there never will be any justice served for her, but I think it's important that we discuss it. Now, this is probably my third time recording this video just due to laggy, and one day it was extremely hot. My daughter kept coming in, whatever the issue. I'm going to go ahead and put this out regardless. Hopefully it's not too laggy. You might see random video put over me showing, so I don't even know. We'll see how it goes, but I definitely want to get this out because I think it's important for people to realize all the details if you didn't catch the press conference they had a few weeks ago. Now, since I've tried to do this a few times, it's a little bit older, but again, I wanted to talk about it. Naomi Irion's case really hit home to me, and I saw a lot of myself in her, as I mentioned in that video. I feel like there's so many times that I've been sitting in my car just playing on my phone, completely oblivious to the world. And you shouldn't die for that. It's unfortunate. It's sad. But I want to discuss how, even though Troy Driver took his own life because he is, in fact, a coward, the details leading up to what would have been his trial and what I believe would have been his conviction. If you haven't seen the first video I did on her, I will try to remember it here. So you can go check that one out, get all the details of what we knew before this press conference, and then you can always jump back over here and listen to this one. I do just want to say that this entire episode / podcast episode is my opinion. Please go do your own research and come to your own conclusion. I decided to do this video to go over the details and basically, like I said, echo the press conference from the Lyons County Sheriff's Department saying how much of a coward Troy Driver is. Like I mentioned in the intro, I usually try not to just put people down because it does no good for them. They don't care about what I have to say. And it does no good for me other than to bring me down to a negative level. So let's just start off with a little bit of what the sheriff said.
I want to share my thoughts with you to avoid any confusion. I have seen the insurmountable evidence against Troy Driver. I know that Troy Driver was a coward who preyed on the vulnerability of an innocent young woman that was Naomi Irion. And Troy Driver proved he was the coward that I knew him to be when he took his own life instead of facing justice. I know this is not the closure the family or law enforcement wanted or anticipated. I empathize with him. However, I do not have any empathy for the damned soul of Troy Driver.
Now, in that press conference, we learned on August 6, 2023, during a routine evening check, 42-year-old Troy Driver was found unresponsive in his cell. Guards reported finding him at 6:17 p.m. and after life-saving support measures were taken, he was pronounced deceased at 6:49 p.m. So about 30 minutes later. It appears basically they tried to do some life-saving measures. They made some phone calls. People came in and tried to revive him themselves, and he was pronounced dead. There were a ton of questions, though, regarding how could this happen. He was an inmate in a prison. He was supposed to be by himself. This wasn't the first time that he actually attempted to take his own life, as we will get into. So people were questioning how this happened. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from the press conference right here that discusses everything around Troy Driver's mental health care in the prison jail. He was in jail, I believe, since he hasn't gone to trial yet. He was just in the county jail. Now, remember, I do try to put timestamps in the description box. So if you don't care about what was said at the press conference, feel free to jump ahead and we'll discuss it a little bit after, I'm sure.
I want to share a timeline of inmate drivers' incarceration in the Lyon County Jail. On March 25th, 2022, Troy Driver was arrested and booked into the Lyon County Jail. On March 31st, 2022, FAST, where the Forensic Assessment Service Team contacted Driver in the jail and he refused their services. On August 18th, 2022, Lyon County detectives recovered a confession letter and a suicide note. Driver was placed on suicide watch at that time. On August 18th, 2022, Driver met with the psych nurse and adamantly denied being suicidal. Driver admits to writing the letter, but wants to be housed in a normal cell in the maximum security housing unit. On August 19, 2022, driver meets with the psych nurse again and denies being suicidal. The psych nurse removes driver from mental health observation and discharges him into the maximum security housing unit of the Lyon County Jail. On August 20th, 2022, driver attempts suicide for the first time. August 22nd, 2022, driver meets with the psych nurse again, which he denies being suicidal and describes being overcome with guilt due to his family having to deal with his incarceration. On August 23rd, 2022, an outside medical professional who is a psych doctor sees driver and reports that he is stable. On August 25th, 2022, driver meets with the psych nurse. Suicide watch is discontinued. However, driver is placed in an isolation cell on a mental health observation and under constant video surveillance. On August 27th, 2022, driver meets with nursing staff and is labeled as stable. On September 2nd, 2022, medical staff report driver is doing better and no longer needs to meet with medical staff. Driver states he wants out of his isolation cell. On September 9, 2022, the psych nurse meets with driver. Driver reports sleep deprivation from the constant checks by deputies on his cell. At this time, driver refuses to take any psych medications. On October 5th, 2022, driver still is in an isolation cell. He denies being suicidal and wants to return to the maximum security housing unit. On October 6, 2022, driver is returned to the maximum security housing unit. On October 15, 2022, driver is seen by a psych doctor for a mental health appointment, and multiple meetings occur with health staff until his next suicide attempt. On March 7th of 2023, driver attempts suicide for the second time and is treated for lacerations on his wrist. On March 9th and March 10th, 2023, driver has a meeting with medical staff on both days. On March 11th of 2023, driver meets with the psych nurse and states he is not suicidal, he only fell on a shampoo bottle. Driver is placed on a mental health watch and again returned to an isolation cell. On April 9th, 2023, driver requests to see the psych nurse. Driver tells the psych nurse he is not suicidal. The psych nurse reports a stable mood, however, driver remains in isolation. On April 20th, 2023, driver is frustrated with isolation. Driver denies being suicidal and again claims sleep deprivation in the isolation cell. During the month of April, driver is seen by medical staff on 7 other occasions with nothing out of routine to report. On May 4th and May 6th of 2023, driver is seen by medical staff. He's reported healthy and working out daily. On June 1st of 2023, driver meets with the medical staff and there's nothing unusual to report. On June 3rd of 2023, driver meets with the psych nurse and is then discharged from his isolation cell. On June 4th of 2023, driver is returned to the maximum security housing unit. Between June 4th and August 6th, driver indicated no signs of depression, crisis, or suicide intentions. The Lyon County Sheriff's Office continually deferred to the assessments of recon medical, mental health professionals, medical professionals, all to determine inmate driver's housing status. At this time, I'll share with you the events of August 6, 2023. On August 6, 2023 at 5:22 p.m., Lyon County detention deputies completed a check of the maximum security cell block where inmate driver was housed. Inmate driver was in his cell drinking water and showed no signs of crisis. At 6:17 p.m., a Lyon County detention deputy began cell checks in the maximum security housing unit of the Lyon County Jail. It was at this time inmate driver was discovered hanging in his cell.
From there in the press conference, police went on to provide some information regarding their investigation into the death of Naomi Irion. Evidence would give some insight onto why Naomi's family is so sure that Troy Driver is the one who murdered their sister and their daughter. So, from the first video, you know that it was actually Naomi's brother Casey who went and found that footage at Walmart that was circulating when she went missing. It was basically video footage of an unknown male walking through the Walmart parking lot and walking up to Naomi's car, pushing her over basically, and driving off. But police would discuss how they used this footage that they saw. They were able to locate a rough make, model, and year of a truck that was seen in the Walmart parking lot that same morning. Police used that make, model information that they obtained to pull DMV records on those in the area that own the same type of truck. Investigators went through truck owners one by one, like old school, one by one, looked them up, crossed them off, and they came across a truck that was registered to a not so great area. It didn't make sense in their head why this truck, the $60,000 truck, would be in this terrible area. So they decided to do a little more research, and this truck came back to Troy Edward Driver. I was always so curious as to how they came across Troy's name. It seemed like it came out of nowhere. They posted all this information about Naomi. I followed it from the day she went missing last year in March of 2022, from when from when it was reported, not the day she went missing, but y'all know what I mean. I was always curious, like I said, about how they came across Troy's name in the first place, because they just basically arrested him. And you'll see on March 25th, they did arrest him. There was no, this person was a suspect. Have you seen this person? Out of nowhere, Troy Driver, well, out of nowhere to the public side, Troy Driver was arrested. So I was very curious how they got to his name. And it looks like, according to this statement, that it was just good old fashioned police work. This is what we like to see. At least what I like to see is cops trying hard, not just giving up. They seem to really, although it took them a little while, unfortunately, to listen to the family. That's one of the biggest gripes in the true crime community is it seems police officers don't always listen to the family when they should. No one knows their loved one better than the family. Another day, another time for that, though. It also came back during the police search of Troy's name that he was a suspect in an open assault case from 2021. Now, in the press conference, they didn't really go into too many details about this sexual assault case that was from 2021, other than this obviously is a red flag. So now they have two major red flags about this person, Troy Driver, the car, which was in the vicinity, and now he has a sexual assault case from 2021 that he's only a suspect in. However, I mean, there's only so many coincidences in everyday life. In my first video about Naomi, we discussed how Troy Driver had a long criminal history. And in the press conference, they echoed this, saying that Troy had issues with animal cruelty as young as being a teenager. And as we know, he was arrested at the age of 17 due to his involvement with a robbery and homicide. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for that robbery homicide, and was released in 2012, where he was on probation in 2014. The police said during the press conference that between the time he was off probation and the time, I would assume in 2021, when he got brought up in this SA case, that he had very minimal interaction with police. So as the timeline progressed, police said that they confirmed that the vehicle that they saw on the surveillance video around the Fernley Walmart on the morning of March 12th, 2022, and again in the late afternoon, abandoning Naomi's car. I wasn't aware that they had video footage of that, which we'll get to in a few moments, but police compared these images. They took the image of the car on surveillance and then looked at Troy Driver's car or truck. I keep saying car, vehicle, whatever. Looked at them and they matched. It looked like all the chrome handles were in the right spot. The tires were the right way. There was very little doubt in police mind that this truck was not the truck that was seen in the Walmart parking lot in the morning and in the afternoon, this truck belonged to Troy Driver. Now, as I just mentioned, there were surveillance cameras in the area where Naomi's car was abandoned, which they did later find. There was surveillance in the area that gave police the big break. As I just said, there was surveillance cameras where Naomi's car was abandoned, which I thought was amazing. And this gave the big break that police needed. So Troy, it shows on surveillance camera where Troy parks the car and then he walks from where he parked Naomi's car back to where his truck was in the Walmart parking lot. I'm not exactly sure the distance, but I guess it wasn't absurd to think that he could walk that. Probably wasn't like miles, I'm assuming. So when he walked back to his car, he walked right past a video camera at a credit union, which saw his face on that camera as he walked by. Police were able to pull that footage and see that actually was Troy Driver too. They were able to tell clear as day as the person walking past it at the same time, coinciding with where the car was dropped off, someone walking was Troy Driver. Crazy that they were able to get all this information. It's one reason why they have no doubt. There's a few other details that we'll go into. We can go over the timeline that was outlined in the press conference as to what is believed has happened that day. So during the investigation, police interviewed Troy Driver's girlfriend at the time. I'm assuming they broke up at the time but they refer to his girlfriend as in current because I'm assuming at the time they were current. Anyway, they obtained some information from them. Police noted that she was extremely helpful in the investigation and there's no proof that she had any knowledge of any of it. However, she was able to provide information like how Troy told her he was going camping by himself the night of March 11th, and he would return at some point the following day. He ended up leaving his cell phone at home, which according to his girlfriend wasn't really out of the ordinary. Like when he would go camping, he would just leave it at home. So that didn't really raise any red flags for her. It is believed on the evening of March 11th, Troy would head up to an old abandoned mine that he was working at a month prior called the Buena Vista Mine. Police would uncover evidence that shows that back on February 14th, 2022, Troy was working at the Buena Vista mine digging sample holes with an excavator. Now, it's believed that back on this date, Troy dug a grave about 4 to 5 feet down and that he would return to this exact spot on March 11th to ensure that the grave was still there untouched. The Buena Vista abandoned mine site is usually locked, but because Troy had worked there a month prior, he had the combination code to get into the site. Now, Troy Driver's girlfriend would turn over a picture that Troy had sent her on that date, February 14th, Valentine's Day. This is what the fuck you're doing on Valentine's Day? Valentine's Day, where he was posing next to an excavator in the background, proving that he, in fact, did have access to an excavator on that site. We'll get into why that matters more later. But as police were reviewing surveillance footage from the morning of March 12th, they saw Troy Driver's truck enter a parking lot next to Walmart, like a dirt parking lot, and park there at 4:22 a.m. Now, this parking lot is usually used for like big rigs, tractor trailers, for them to like pull off to the side. This parking lot is quite big and it's just dirt, but that doesn't mean that there's no video cameras. So he pulled in there 4:22 a.m. and basically just waited. Now, in surveillance video that was previously released from the Walmart parking lot, we were able to tell that Naomi arrived at the Walmart parking lot at 5:09 a.m., where she parked her car to wait for the bus that she would take into work. Cell phone data would show that Naomi would send a Snapchat just 1 minute before a man who would be seen on footage confronted Naomi. After banishing what police believed was a gun, Troy kidnapped Naomi and drove the 90-minute drive from the Fernley Walmart to the Buena Vista abandoned mine. Once there, it's believed he forced her to undress and assault. Police would say that there was evidence at the mine that shows Troy shot her. And I hate talking about this stuff. Sorry to cut right into it. I just hate it because it's human and you never know when their family's watching. So unfortunately, this is an extremely hard. I hate this stuff, but it's a part of the case. It shows that she was unfortunately shot outside the grave in the head. He drove her into the grave and then he would shoot her again in the chest when she was in there. After he buried her, police believe that he burned the clothes that she was wearing and then some of his own to help cover up the crime. Troy was then seen on surveillance footage again at about 4 p.m. on the same day, March 12th, abandoning her car and walking back to his own truck. And this is when he was seen on the camera footage, allowing police to verify that it was, in fact, him who got out of Naomi's car. So he would be seen walking back to the Walmart parking lot, returning to his truck, and would be tracked actually stopping back again in Naomi's car. No one's really sure exactly why he stopped at Naomi's car. He could have got some, like, went in and got something, but either way, he like pulled up next to it, got out, got in hers, and got him back in his own truck and was seen driving off. On March 19th, in what police assume would be a way to try and cover up his involvement in the murder, Troy drives to a town 2 hours away called Winnemucca, I think. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Hopefully I pronounced that right, which is in Nevada. And like I said, 2 hours away from Fernley to have his tires changed. Just his tires changed. Police are able to verify that tires were at the same locations of the shop that he went to. He just chose to travel to this area in what police believe is an attempt to avoid being caught, since there was so much media coverage on the case that he didn't want to be anywhere near Fernley getting his tires changed because if you follow this case, you know that at one point police did release information requesting information about the truck before they arrested Troy. They would request if anyone had information about this vehicle to contact them. So it wasn't like his truck was under the radar. So he wanted to go get his tires changed and he leave them at the shop before heading back home. Then thankfully, on March 25th, 2022, police would have enough after being able to review the surveillance footage of him by the credit union and all that. They were able to have enough to seize his truck and search his home. When they seized his truck, this is when they noticed that the tires had been changed and they were like brand spanking new. So they were like, why would they do this? Did some investigating. They were able to go and find those old tires that he left at the shop. They still had them. Thankfully, it was only like 5 days, 6 days. I wonder how long they keep those. So it would be mentioned that on this first day, March 25th, that he was given his first evaluation, I guess, or psych services or whatever they're called in the hospital, mental health services, reached out, or in jail, reached out to Troy and he declined any services or treatment from them. Now, it was around the time of his arrest that police received a tip from what we will call just a coworker. Somebody had advised police that on February 14th, this coworker spoke with Troy because Troy was awaiting an excavator up at the Buena Vista mine, but the excavator was delivered to where this other person was working. So we had to call or get in touch with directly Troy to confirm to send that excavator over to the Buena Vista mine for him to be able to dig those sample holes. Looks like he really did dig those sample holes, but he had other ulterior motives in his mind. After this tip, investigators decided to head out to this Buena Vista mine to search it and hopefully find Naomi's body. And unfortunately, they did locate a gravesite. I was very curious about this as well. These are the two big things I wanted to know: how they came across Troy Driver and how they found Naomi's body. In the first video, you will remember that her family was so thankful that they found her body. They talked about going to the gravesite because they wanted to be there. They wanted to know where she was unfortunately laid to rest. Well, not laid to rest, I guess, but more took her last breath. But anyway, so they drove out there and they said that it was, this back road after back road to the desert. They were just so happy to find her. So I was curious, how did police know that she was there? And it was because somebody said something. Somebody called into police to let them know about this site, which they had no idea prior to this tip, right when he was arrested, around the time that he was arrested, that he worked out there. So if that person didn't, we could have never found her body. So Naomi's body would be located, unfortunately, in this grave, and police would be able to see marks from an excavator, like it was dug by an excavator at different levels of the grave. So they were able to conclude that it was an excavator that dug this hole. And this is why the excavator matters in this entire story, because it's important to prove that Troy had access to an excavator, because how many of us have access to that on an everyday basis? Also located at the mine site was tire truck marks from Troy's original tires and the Naomi's car. Both were able to be confirmed to have been at that site. Police also said during this press conference that in June of 2022, DNA results matched DNA that was taken from Naomi's body in different areas, including, unfortunately, her private areas, were a match to Troy Edward Driver. So as you can see, the evidence against Troy is pretty overwhelming. It's upsetting that he didn't make it to trial, because usually I like to keep the mindset people are innocent until proven guilty, keep an open mind. Sometimes innocent people go to prison. However, as you can see throughout all these details, I cannot come to the conclusion that he did not do this. And in my own opinion, taking your own life shows a consciousness of guilt. That was something I actually heard from Bruce Rivers, who is a defense lawyer. It's enjoyable to watch him. He's funny, but he does swear a lot, so be mindful of that if you go check him out. Police also learned, with the help of Troy Driver's girlfriend, that he was really into reading about serial killers and listening to podcasts about them. Now, in my opinion, I think he just listened to this stuff to get an idea of what he needed to do. In his mind, he was trying to commit the perfect crime. Find someone random to kidnap, take them to a site where they would never be found, change his tires. He was trying to get away with the whole thing. And it seemed like he put a lot of work and thought into this. And I think that's why he was reading those books and those podcasts. But thankfully, he did a real shit job and he was found, because I can't imagine that if he didn't get found, that this would be the only person to be taken at his hands. Troy's girlfriend also shared that Troy would ask her daughter about the bus that traveled down to the industrial park that Naomi takes. Troy was questioning her about the location of the stops and how many people are on the bus at different times. It seemed like he would try to gather this information to find a good time and place, unfortunately. Now, in August of 2022, Troy would attempt to take his own life for the first time when he attempted to hang himself. Police confirmed that after this attempt, he was placed on special watch. They provided a good amount of detail into the services provided to Driver in the following months. That was a lot in the beginning clip, the first clip that we talked about with his mental health services. Mostly, it seemed like he would be on this watch on and off for a while, put back on, taken off. But aligning with his first attempt, Troy wrote a note to his girlfriend. In this note, he didn't take direct responsibility or confess, but according to police, he expressed regret. In my opinion, it's regret that he hurt people around him, not necessarily for what he did to Naomi, but regret for hurting his girlfriend and anyone else that he supposedly loved in his life. But in the note, Driver said that, quote, "There has always been a terrible darkness in me," end quote, and planning on taking his own life rather than exposing his loved ones to what he had done. Now, Troy was able to get this note to his girlfriend by smuggling it out in a deck of playing cards that was taken out with someone who was being released. This person would pass it on to Troy's girlfriend, who thankfully passed it on to the police. Troy would attempt to take his life again on March 7th, 2023, where I would assume he was again put on special watch to prevent from this happening again. However, as we know, he was successful on his third attempt. And while discussing this last attempt, police said that they found detailed notes in his cell after he passed, detailing the guard's activities in order to succeed in his goal within a short window. It's sad to say, but police believe the only random part about Troy's plan was Naomi herself. Like I said, it seems like he planned this out. Details, details, details. But he just had to find the right person, and unfortunately, that is Naomi Irion. They believe through his actions, he planned to kidnap and murder someone at least a month prior, back on February 14th, almost a month. It was like 2 days shy, when he had the excavator out at the abandoned mine where he was working for the day. He told his girlfriend he was going camping. He didn't take his phone with him. Police believe Troy returned to the spot just before kidnapping Naomi to ensure that he would be able to complete his plan. That the grave had not been found out and that he was able to complete it. He was seen on video dropping off Naomi's car after she was kidnapped. And more importantly, the biggest thing, Troy Driver's DNA was located on areas of Naomi that it should not be. It's important to emphasize that although Troy didn't want the truth to come out, so he took his own life, the truth is still coming out. The details are still there. The evidence is still there that he committed this crime and this murder. Now, my thoughts are with Naomi's family during this difficult time. I can't imagine that this is at all how they wanted things to end. Maybe in the end, the death penalty. I'm not sure if Nevada has the death penalty or not. Either way, it's just heartbreaking that after losing a daughter or a sister that they cared so much for, that this would be unfortunately how the case comes to an end. I want to leave this video with a sweet memorial the police put in place at the end of the press conference. And if you're listening to this on podcast form, I recommend popping over to the YouTube video to check it out, because Naomi is the most important thing in all of this. And although most of us can agree that Troy Driver is a coward, it will not define who Naomi was. Until the next video, stay safe out there. The world can be an ugly place.
Conclusion. Naomi was a beautiful person with her entire life ahead of her. Naomi's life was taken from her by an evil person. Speaking on behalf of the Lyon County and Churchill County Sheriff's Office Investigations Divisions and every other detective, officer, district attorney, and citizen that aided in this investigation, Naomi will live on in our hearts forever. It was an honor to try and serve justice for Naomi. Our heartfelt condolences go to Naomi's family, whose lives were changed forever by a selfish and evil person. The Lyon County Sheriff's Office would also like to give a special thanks to the Nevada Threat Analysis Center, who didn't take a day off until Driver was arrested. The Lyon County Sheriff's Office would also like to thank the professionals at Champion Chevrolet and Wildlife Chevrolet for their assistance. A special thanks also goes to every law enforcement agency involved in this investigation, to include the Churchill County Sheriff's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Washoe County Sheriff's Office Forensic Science Division, the Pershing County Sheriff's Office, the United States Marshal Service, and the Pyramid Lake Tribal Police.